Hello everyone, I'm Drachona. This was an unplanned video, but I opened up my Firefox browser and I saw this article and I really wanted to talk about it. I haven't actually read through it yet, so maybe it won't be as stupid as it seems, but it sure seems pretty stupid right off the bat. So the article is called New Insights into Self-Insight. More may not be better. An innovative study technique yields surprising results that counter the popular idea that knowing yourself is good for you.
What are you, fucking stupid?
How useful is it really to know thyself? Oh my fucking god. It's the very first line, and I'm already just completely bewildered and pissed off. What the fuck do you mean, how useful is it really to know yourself? I mean, have you ever heard the word psychology? How can it be a bad thing to understand yourself? To know about who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, how can that be a bad thing compared to not knowing those things and just being completely oblivious? The idea that self-insight is good for us dates all the way back to the inscriptions on ancient Greece's Temple of Apollo in Delphi. It is still popularly assumed that people with a clear view of themselves and their abilities are better off, that they feel better. Well, right. Feel better, have more satisfying relationships, and are more successful. I mean, yeah, I'm sure the relationships and success part are true, because if you're more secure within yourself, if you understand yourself better, you're going to know better what you want, and especially why you want it. But feel better. I mean, yeah, theoretically, if you're more secure within yourself, you're going to be less stressed. Because you're not going to be, confused about your own fears, your own hang-ups. But I have a feeling I know where this is going, which makes the title of the article make more sense, but it also, if it's going where I think it's going, then this is fucking stupid. But when psychologists have tested that premise, they haven't found much strong empirical evidence of the benefits of self-insight for well-being. Isn't it kind of self-evident? Doesn't it sort of speak for itself? Again, what is the alternative? Just being completely oblivious of yourself? I don't understand how that could be good for you. An intriguing new study recently added provocative findings. I love these words. It's like they're setting it up to be right. To this long-standing debate. It tested 5 of the most common hypotheses on the connection between self-insight and psychological adjustment. Does self-knowledge really lead to higher satisfaction? See? Higher satisfaction. They're misframing the whole thing. Understanding yourself, yes, I would argue ultimately leads to more satisfaction. If you understand yourself better and therefore become more secure within yourself, then yeah, it will ultimately lead to more satisfaction. But the way they're framing it, it's like, I'm wondering if what they're suggesting is, well, if you focus on the reality of your existence, might you not be as happy because it's too stressful? Sort of the ignorance is bliss kind of thing. In which case, well, yeah, obviously, you might feel more comfortable being completely delusional. That doesn't mean it's a good thing, though. Yes, you can go off and hide in your literal or metaphorical corner and believe whatever the fuck you want, and you might actually feel better. At least you think you do. You feel more safe, and that creates less stress. But the reality is, if you face who you actually are and the way the world actually is, and you get over that fact, you will feel better. I feel like where they're going with this is that It just feels better to be delusional. Is it maybe more productive to just think positively, even if a little overconfidently, about one's abilities? I mean, overconfidence can be a bad thing, but, underestimating yourself can be bad as well. I think it's more valuable to just be realistic. I mean, to get through the day, you have to be somewhat optimistic, of course. You have to have a reason to get out of bed. If you were always just realistic, then you might think, well, why should I even bother getting out of bed? I mean, how do I know that the day is really going to be worth it? What if I don't get anything accomplished today? You have to be a little bit optimistic. You have to think, okay, I don't know for sure, but I'm just going to take a wild guess and assume that I'm not going to, twist my ankle or get attacked by a tiger or something. Or could it just be that those with the highest abilities will be optimally adjusted? The study, published last month in Nature Human Behavior, found support for none of these ideas. Okay. Speaking as somebody with a master's degree, explain to me why I should give a shit what one random journal, or maybe 3-4 researchers who did this article think. Why should I give a flying fuck? It's not just enough to say, studies show. Well, what studies? What was their methodology? Did they twist the results? What was their sample size? Just saying, the general public just falls for the phrase, studies show. Well, what studies? I've read plenty of studies that are complete bullshit. My entire master's thesis was based primarily on a tenured professor who made a claim about a culture for which there was no physical evidence. And that claim had been held since the 80s. Point being, just because something is published in a peer-reviewed journal doesn't mean that it's true. You have to actually read it and, hold it up to scrutiny. Anyway, moving on. Instead, it tentatively indicated that it is people with the biggest gap between their abilities and their view of themselves who say they have the highest levels of satisfaction with their life, career, and relationships. Well, yeah, again, no shit! Ignorance is bliss. Not knowing things is much less stressful than knowing things. There are people out there, I'm absolutely certain, who never think beyond Earth. They don't think about our position in the universe. Of course, that's easier to deal with. At least, in certain circumstances. If your world is a lot smaller and a lot less complex, then yeah, that's easier to deal with. As long as you don't have to actually, face reality. Because if you live in, say, Western society, you can afford to not be familiar with reality. Actual reality, and when I say that, I mean, the way the world really is. I'm not talking about, other countries. I mean, the natural world. You can afford to not understand that. Until your ass gets lost out in the woods, then you're going to be fucked. But just because it's easier to live in a bubble where the world that you know is small and simple doesn't mean that it's ultimately good for you. There are some people out there, they don't necessarily need to think about that shit. They can get through their entire lives without thinking on a complex level. They just don't have to. I'm not saying everybody has to. But to just say that people are more satisfied by not knowing things, it's well, yeah, again, ignorance is bliss. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. I mean, what are you suggesting? That we all just be fucking oblivious? We just stop knowing things. Stop thinking things. Stop looking into anything. Avoid reality and hope that it doesn't come back to bite you in the ass.
I think that I am familiar with the fact that you are going to ignore this particular problem until it swims up and bites you on the ass.
Beyond its unanticipated findings... Unanticipated... If you just took, a high school level psychology class, you could anticipate this. You could anticipate, yeah, it's less stressful to not know shit. Beyond its unanticipated findings, the new study is notable for how it was conducted. Oh, here we go. It was a registered report. A new and still relatively rare process that fundamentally shifts the way scientific research is published by front-loading peer review into the planning stages of a study and accepting that study in principle for publication before any data have been collected regardless of the result. Okay, that could be a good thing, or it could be the worst fucking thing possible in that situation. Getting people's opinions, I mean, yeah, I guess if you're just saying, like, they're looking at the hypothesis and the planned methodology, that could be good. But again, just because something is peer-reviewed doesn't mean that it's, like, become true. It could be getting peer-reviewed by people who also don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Let me put it this way. In a perfect world, probably a great idea. In the real world, I see a lot of ways in which that could go wrong. That could just further bias the study before they actually have results, because if you go out and you get results, then you already know whether or not your hypothesis is supported. And then it can be held up to scrutiny. Because you might find out that it was a waste of time the whole time, so doing the peer review beforehand might just be an even greater waste of time. By that criterion, the self-insight study was an excellent candidate. It was one of the first 2 registered reports in Nature Human Behavior. Both appeared in the same issue, along with an editorial on the importance of this new way of doing science. Most people would guess, and many interventions are built upon the assumption, that knowing how smart and skilled you are benefits you in the long run. But this casts doubt on that assumption. I don't understand how knowing yourself better could be a bad thing, because the only alternatives are you are overconfident or underconfident. Both, I think, have objectively worse results. If you're overconfident, if you assume that you're better than you actually are, then you're going to get into situations you can't handle. If you're underconfident, then you doubt yourself and you're likely never going to be able to reach your full potential. So explain to me how having a better understanding of what you're capable of is the worst of those 3 options. By extending the survey over a week, she adds, she and Cotier, I don't know exactly how to pronounce that, avoided the distortion that might come with someone having a particularly good or bad day. By extending the survey over a week, that is not enough time to avoid that distortion. I mean, if you know anything about people, they could be having a bad time for well over a week. And I'm not just talking about, like, being in an actual depressive state. I'm just saying, like, you don't know what could be happening. You know, maybe they just, like, blew a tire and they missed a day of work and they've been upset for a couple weeks now. You know, I mean, that a week is not a long enough time in the lifespan of a human being to really get an idea of, like, yeah, that's probably a good range of emotion. Previous studies on self-insight had been limited in part by statistical techniques. Most researchers have employed difference scores, measures of the gap between true and self-perceived ability, but they have been criticized because blah 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 blah. Importantly, even if it is confirmed that self-insight does not provide much benefit in psychological adjustment, a clear view of one's abilities might still be an important element in job performance or other areas. No fucking shit! Psychologist Elizabeth Tenney, who studies organizational behavior at the University of Utah, doesn't think that all job reviews and student evaluations should leave out feedback on strengths and weaknesses just yet. Just yet? Why would you do that? Like, that's still an important thing, regardless of the results of these studies. Regarding the study, she says, they didn't give subjects self-insight and then watch what happened over time. Yeah, which you couldn't just do over a short period of time, because that's not how people work. It could take fucking years to really understand, like, years to do proper introspection and years to fully internalize your experiences. It's not something that happens within a few days. Nothing should be based on a single paper. Well, yeah, no fucking shit. What is clear is that registered reports allow scientists a clearer perspective on their own work. Scientists are human, Tenney says. You don't know, they could be aliens. We immediately will rationalize and find explanations for results. I love that this process ties the author's hands to do the analysis that they set out to do. This is the way science is supposed to work. That's it? I mean, I know I already knew it was about in the article, but that's it. This is the way science is supposed to work. That's how it ends. What? We end with, even if it is confirmed that self-insight does not provide much benefit. So it wasn't confirmed? Need I remind you of the title of this article? New insights into self-insight. More may not be better. An innovative study technique yields surprising results that counter the popular idea that knowing yourself is good for you. What the fuck were the results? I mean, am I fucking crazy here? They go from explaining how the study happened to jerking themselves off more about how great what they're doing is. And then it's just the end of the article where it says, even if it is confirmed, so it wasn't confirmed. Like, you didn't even list the results of the study. You didn't give us any numbers. You didn't give us any information. You didn't. There were no results. So we have no. This study could have been fucking made up, and I don't even know, or it could have happened, but we don't know the results. So what the fuck am I supposed to take away from this? I started reading this because I wanted to hear their results, because I figured that where they were going with it was, well, you know, basically, if you have a simpler, more contained view of your life, of reality, it's less stressful. Again, ignorance is bliss, and complexity is stressful. Welcome to life. But it didn't even go there. It did not even go there. It just talked about, barely, how the study was done, why this method of peer review before doing the actual study is so great, and then it fucking ends. The article is more about the way the study was done than the actual study. And I would like to remind you, this is in Scientific American. Scientific fucking American! Oh my fucking god. Well, anyway, that was an unsatisfying conclusion. I'm sorry. This doesn't usually happen to me. Anyway, if anything, I guess we can take out of this, don't trust an article just because it exists. Definitely don't trust articles that are published just on regular, like, magazine sites or news sites. I mean, if you don't know that already, then just try looking up something from New York Times, Time Magazine, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Huffington Post. That is pretty much said and done, but even when it comes to scholarly articles, don't just trust them because they exist. Don't trust a peer-reviewed journal just because it exists. Like, just read through the actual study. Don't cite a study because it supports what you want, whatever you want to believe. Read through it and be critical of the hypothesis, the methodology, and the way that they process the results. That's the one thing. If there's one bit of advice I will give to anybody, just because a study exists or an article exists does not mean that it is right. I don't care how many smart people, or supposedly smart people, worked on it. Okay? That's a logical fallacy. You have to actually look it over and assess it logically. Anyway, I guess that's it for this video. If you liked it, like it. If you really like me, then please subscribe. Or just comment, you know. I like reading the comments. In the meantime, I'm Drachona, and I'll see you guys next time.
What are you, fucking stupid?